thank you everyone for coming. I know it's incredibly strange time, and with most of us spending work and school on our computers, having to get back on your computer to do something quote unquote social is probably not great, but we appreciate it. Um, if you're not in the local Boston area, Belmont Books is located outside of Cambridge. And my brain left my body. We're located outside of Cambridge. We have a pretty robust virtual events calendar right now. No more events this week. So, Rob, you have the entire events week to yourself this week.
Yay.
Next week, we have a paperback launch of Peace Adzo Medi's book. I think it's His Only Wife, which was a previous staff pick. On Wednesday, we have the debut Fresh by Margot Wood. Interestingly enough, it is an Emma retelling set at Emerson College, which is a local university, which I attended, Abby attended. So we're doing a launch with her, with author Veronica Roth. And then Thursday, we have a paperback launch, or not paperback, picture book launch with Amitha Knight. This is her first book, and we're so excited because she's local. She's a customer of Belmont Books, and it looks super cute. She is personalizing and signing copies. So we hope you will check everything out. If you've never attended a virtual event with us before, Abby and Rob are going to talk until about 1:15, and then we will open it up for questions. To submit a question, all you have to do is click on the little box at the bottom of your screen. It looks like 2 speech bubbles. It says Q&A, and you can type your questions in there. And Abby will read them, 7:45, 7:50. And we hope you have lots of questions for both Abby and Rob. Now I'm going to, read their intros, and we can get on with it. So we'll start with Abby, who is an award-winning journalist and the author of Teenage Wasteland. A former fat kid weighs in on living large, losing weight, and how parents can and can't help. For 5 years, she wrote the Preludes column about young people and money for the Sunday Money and Business section of the New York Times. She's also a regular contributor to the health, style, business, and education sections of the New York Times. And of course, her writing has been featured there, New York Times Magazine, Wall Street Journal, Psychology Today, to name a few. She holds an MFA in creative writing from Emerson and a master's in international public policy from Johns Hopkins. As of this writing, her greatest accomplishments are summiting Kilimanjaro with a broken wrist and naming Caramel Sutra ice cream for Ben & Jerry's, which is very coincidental because our former book buyer named Cherry Garcia for Ben. Yeah.
That's hysterical. Yeah. That's really funny.
Oh, I want to talk to him.
Yeah, his name is Lee, so maybe Stacy can put you in contact. Yeah.
I thought it was a woman. Sorry, Rob. I realized.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, so Lee told his best friend that they should name it Cherry Garcia, and she wrote it in for him.
Did she get any money? I didn't.
I don't know.
Okay. All right. We'll
talk about that later.
Abby's also based in Brookline, but right now she's currently enjoying the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee. And now we're all
born in Brookline. I live in New York.
Oh, anyway. Born in Brookline. Rob, who we're all here to see, is a lifelong New Yorker, an actor, producer, acting coach, and fitness trainer. He is the director of the Sedgwick Acting Studio in New York. He's the proud father of a grown daughter, Audrey, and a young son, Caleb, as well as Charlotte, a pit bull, and 2 cats, Thor and Fernando. Rob has been sober 25 years. Congrats, Rob. My dad has been sober for 4. So it's a process. Yeah.
Yeah. Keep going, man.
Yeah.
Day at a time.
But I'm going to turn it over to the both of them, and we'll get on with the show. Thank you both, Abby and Rob.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Rob, can you hear me?
I can hear you clear as a bell. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're clear as a whistle.
Okay, groovy.
So I just got a note from Benita, that it was hard to hear me. So I've never heard that before. So
she's older and she's hard of hearing.
That's clearly what it is.
Right.
So I just want to tell you, Rob, that there's a few things. Hi, everybody. Welcome. I am in the Tennessee mountains right now, and I'm with a friend of mine who I have known from high school when I was 15 years old. And we met at Jason Kahn's party, which to both of us was the greatest party ever. Like, it was fantastic. We still
Right.
had this party that was the best party. And I'm reading your book, and I'm reading your book, which I have right here. A lot of my notes that I have. But anyway, I'm thinking to myself, I really wish that I had been hanging out in New York City with you back in the day, because you had a lot of fun, Rob.
Yeah, it was different. Yeah, we were busy, man. Yeah.
It was like Jason Kahn's party, but to the nth degree. And I was a little bummed. So I want to relive, because I sort of peaked in 1978, and I don't know about you, but I'm happy to like talk about that time period. It was very different, I think, in New York City than it was in Brookline,
Oh
Massachusetts.
my God, yeah. No, I mean, the parents were like not around, and you could do whatever you want. We would get up at 6:30, 6, and start drinking and getting high before school. So by the time we hit school, we had had a party already, and it was kind of a real groovy experience. So you kind of walk into school like, woohoo. And then one of the guys who worked for us, Linus, who's in the book, he had a he drank with us a lot, and he was supposed to eat parsley, and that was supposed to cover the alcohol scent, which of course never worked. So yeah.
Linus wasn't just some guy. I mean, just in case people don't know, the book Bob Goes to Jail is a memoir written by Sedgwick here, about basically being a fuck up and
Okay.
getting busted, right? Is that fair? And doing
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And obviously, Sedgwick, most people know your sister Kira, but I actually knew, well, there's Edie Sedgwick, who is your second cousin, right?
Yes.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And John Sedgwick, who's from Boston, right?
Yes.
The writer. So what I also discovered, and I was happy, is that you're a Jew. So welcome. I'm happy to have you.
Thank you so much.
I didn't realize you were Jew because you're so tall, but
I've only been Jewish for 60 years, so it's really great. It's really great.
All
All my best friends are Jewish.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I had no idea. But it's about what a fuck up you were, and sort of all the people, the fuck up people around you. And Linus was not just a person; he was a live-in. He was the cook, right? He was the
Okay. Yeah. Who ended up like? Can I spoiler alert that one?
It's okay with me. I mean.
Yeah, he ended up actually raping a friend of mine. He was really brilliant. It was a different time. My mother ended up hiring really these brilliant, quite remarkable people. He played classical recorder. He did what do you call the interpretations. Giorgione was his favorite painter, so he would take cellophane and paint over, and then paint over the Giorgione, and then put it on canvas, rendering it his own interpretation. He was a remarkable cook and just a fascinating guy, about 28 years old, brilliant, crazy brilliant, and kind of seduced my mom and us. He was kind of like our Falstaff. I mean, we would go drink with him in the basement where he lived. He had a half yard, which he would fill up with beer, and we would drink that. He would always drink with his pinky out. His brother had the best cocaine connections in New York City. He was the dealer. He did 2 years for cocaine distribution, his brother did. And so his brother would bring over people who just got out of jail, because his brother had just gotten out of jail with guns and all sorts of interesting things. So it was an interesting life. And yeah, you could say it's fuck up, but it's more of kind of like, I don't know. It's like, yeah, we were fuck ups, but I think the book is more like how this happened. And I have a kid now, and it's like, and ironically, like a couple of guys in the story, we're still our best friends, even though I fingered them, put them in jail. We go to each other's weddings. We're very, very close. But one of my friends, the guy Seth Goldberg, said he put his daughter into Temple. And I said, why'd you do that? And he said, because any chance I have at guidance for my daughter, I'm taking it, because we had no guidance. And look what happened to us.
See, and I see it as, well, look at what happened to you. And at the end of the day, though, you're okay. I mean, that's what I think is the big
thing. But we were real, because we talk about that, and that we're all still alive is really remarkable. And a lot of people died around us.
Well, there was the guy. What was his name? Miguel. Who had this?
Well, it's a pseudonym, but his name is Diego Robles, and he died. His liver exploded in jail. He was sort of like the head Mexican guy in Mexico, like cartel bandits, whatever you want to call them. His father was a general in the Mexican army, so we would have these loads of like a quarter ton, half ton come through the Mexican border, and because of his grandfather, I'm sorry, was a general in the Mexican army, that the border was just greased up, and we would have our loads just go through.
How as a kid, you're at all these private schools, right? Well, first of all, I don't know what your father did for work. I still don't understand what he did for
The
work.
real father, my stepfather.
Your real father, Sedgwick.
Oh, he was like, he was like an entrepreneur. He was not a real businessy guy. He went to Harvard and he was a lovely guy, but he was not like Jewish cutthroat business guy. He was more Marquis of Queensbury. I do say in the book, he could have had a pretty dynamic political career. He had Eleanor Roosevelt stumping for him. He had Bobby Kennedy stumping for him. He had Adlai Stevenson advocating for him. He ended up being district leader on the East Side, and his Democratic club said that this is not your time, and he said fuck you, and he beat out the Puerto Rican incumbent in his backyard 30 years. He beat him out 64ish, I think. And then my dad said, after that, he said, great, now we're going to go with March with Dr. King, whatever. What year was that? I Have a Dream speech. What year was that?
Was it 60? Well, he was wasn't he killed in 69? When was he killed?
68, he was killed. So I want to say 64ish. Whenever he won the district leadership, then he marched his constituents to Washington, and he sat on the stage when Martin Luther King gave that speech. And so he could have really which is pretty great, and he could have
impart all that to you. Did he impart his kind
No, he was not bragging. He mentioned it later in life. He was, because I mentioned the speech and how remarkable it was whenever I did that. And he said, yeah, I was on that stage. I was 20 feet away from him. And because when I won the district leadership, I marched everybody over. This is what we're going to do. We're supporting Dr. King, which is kind of cool because that's what my, family did. So,
well, one of the things that I think is, what's interesting is that you're on the one hand this super privileged white kid, right?
Yeah.
Even if you are Jewish, you're privileged.
Well, Jewish and oppressed at the same time, and a lot of guilt. But anyway, go ahead.
You suffer,
A lot of suffering.
But the thing that's cool is that you also have this awareness, at least in your retelling of the book, you have this awareness of your privilege, and you have your, this awareness when you go to this. It was like a cotillion, I guess. Was that what your mom sent you to? This kind of waspy,
Oh my God, that was the Goddard Gaieties.
Yeah,
so my mother sent us this Goddard Gaieties thing, and my brother and I were just, we hated it. It was like the most disgusting thing. And this kid with like custard hair and like some other blonde chick were doing like some dumbass dance. We were like, you got to be kidding me. And I said to my brother, I was like, why is this so disgusting? He's like, there's not one Black or Puerto Rican kid here. Mom took us out like 2 days later. She was like, I get it. That's it. I mean, we're just like, we hated it. No, we just, and that wasn't New York. New York back then was everyone in the same fucking boat. Black, purple, green with yellow polka dots, off purple, you name it. Everyone was there. And you had to get along, and people did get along. And yeah, there was a lot of like, I was mugged. I was in court by the time I was 9. It was like testifying because I had been mugged. But there was a kind of respect, and people, and if the shit really hit the fan, someone helped you out, and it was a rougher, it's not like now, it's just like Smurfville. And
but it's interesting because I had this line that I about when you're getting mugged and your brother Nico looks outside and sees it, and he tells your mom, and she's like, yeah, well, he needs to figure that out because is that really what happened?
Oh yeah.
Did you ever say to her later on, like, Mom, what the fuck?
No, I was like 8 at the time, so it's like maybe that wasn't in my vocabulary. I mean, but it was also like No, she was also like separated from my dad, so she was having a hard time. So we were dealing with that. And until we met my stepfather, we were very middle class. I mean, we were not. There was no upper anything. And we lived at 300 Central Park West, which back then it was called the Wild West for a reason. I mean, it was rough. That was a rough neighborhood.
Street there, 300 Central Park West is.
That's on 90th Street, but you did not go. You did not go to Columbus Avenue. You certainly did not go to Amsterdam. And if you ever crossed west, you always went through the train. You crossed on 96th Street, 86th Street, 79th Street. You never went between the other streets going west.
But it's not like you were. I mean, your mother's parents, your grandpa, where so much of the book takes place. The beginning. I mean, kind of where you get busted, right? Because he's in the 70s. You're living there.
Yes.
And bringing in all these drugs, and obviously the door person, because see, I'm politically correct, door person.
Yeah. Door person. He nailed our ass.
He nailed your ass. Nailed your ass. It's funny. I'm actually have a problem in New York City and with one of the people who works in my building, and I'm like debating how to deal with that. And anyway, I was thinking about that as I was reading your book. But yeah, he nailed your ass. But I mean, he had money. He was privileged. I mean, your mom grew up.
My grandfather?
Yeah, your mom's.
Actually, my grandfather. Yeah, he was an interesting story. He did grow up loaded in New York, and they go way back. He's Jewish, and they made a bunch of money. And I think he lived in, I want to say Jersey, but they had a place. I think his mother had a place on Fifth Avenue. This is going back to the 20s. Yeah, and it's interesting. My mom's side of the family has been here for a long time. I want to say sometime in the 18th century or something like that. 19th century, excuse me. But my stepfather, he worked really hard. He was not to the manor born, and he was, but it was interesting. He and my grandmother were both very Jewish and very anti-Semitic. And there's a story in there where my mom, when she went to Brearley, one of the kids there said to my mother, it's like, when my mother was a kid, said, well, I'm leaving here, because they let Jews here. My mother, they let Jews in Brearley? And she said, yes. And then you're the Jew. Mom's like, I'm Jewish?
I know.
So she goes home and says, I didn't know I was Jewish. And the parents like, yes, you're Jewish. And she celebrated Christmas with the Gentiles devotion, and had a Catholic, nanny living there, and it was really hysterical.
Gentiles.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because as I have a Jewish mom, and some of my best friends are Jewish moms. So how did your Jewish mom, your Jewish waspy mom, feel? I mean, did she read the book? Did she read it?
Oh yeah, she loves it. Yeah.
She does love it. Did she say, was there a little mea culpa in there? Was she like?
She felt, I mean, she's older. This happened a long time ago. I think she feels really badly because, they weren't parenting, I mean, she married a very powerful, tremendously successful art dealer, Ben Heller, who pioneered the careers of Jackson Pollock and Mark Rothko, Clifford Still, and Barney Newman, the titans of American art and our great contribution to painting to the world. I mean, which matches up against, Rembrandt and Michelangelo and Picasso. And he was one of the 3 or 4 people who just said, yes, this is great, when everyone else thought it was shit. And the art ended up being worth a lot of money. And so by the time we met him, we moved, it was a museum. I mean, I was like, what the fuck? I mean, it was like really weird,
Biggest, I mean, as you're saying here, it was, and as anytime you mention this place, you're like, and it was the biggest brownstone, bigger than any brownstone ever, right?
Well, that we moved to, but it originally went to Kenilworth on the west side, and Rothko called it the Frick of the Upper West Side, because Kenilworth is on 70, I think it's 74th, 75th Central Park West, and you had Blue Poles, which is now with the Australian government, worth, I think it's priceless. That was in the living room. Plus you had all the great Rothkos. Plus you had the great Barney Newman, which now sits at MoMA. I will not pretend to pronounce the name. It's Herodotus Subliminus something or otherus. And it's one of the great Newmans. And there was also Clifford Stills. We knocked into the Rothkos all the time. Ben had to fix them because we were playing tag. Nick, my brother and I, it's also in the book, we ended up obliterating an African statue made of twigs, and we were thump, 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 and we heard ba-boom, and we walked in the other room, and this huge, really obnoxious statue also, it kind of looked beyond you all the time. I always thought it was very rude. So we killed it by mistake. And it was just destroyed. And when Ben came home, he was just so mad at us that he just didn't even talk to us. I mean, but we were kids, you know.
But you know, again, reading your book, and I want you to read from it actually in a minute. But one of the things that I remember was when your friend came over. Was it Moss? I guess they're all pseudonyms, but was it Goldstein, Goldberg, Iceberg Goldberg, whoever it was? When Ben was interrogating this kid and terrifying this kid, right? And then your mom.
Yeah, my Jordan, who ended up, he's the guy I ended up dealing with. Oh yeah, he scared the shit out of him.
I mean, and
yeah.
was that like deliberate on Ben's part?
I'm sorry, was it what? I'm sorry.
Was it deliberate on Ben's part? Was he like deliberately trying?
He was a brilliant. He was a brilliant tyrant. He was an incredible narcissist. He was a fascinating guy. I've never heard anyone speak like that. He couldn't write. His writing made no sense. But when he spoke, it was just brilliant, and it was understandable. But he would just the topics and the subtopics and the subtopics, and then always leading back to the original of what he brought up, and really and the elegance and the specificity and the unique viewpoint. The only other person I met in my life as smart as him is the guy in the book, Seth Goldberg.
Yeah.
Who is he was smarter than everybody else. He was way ahead of the law. He was under the radar. He was grilled, and I have a chapter in that where they're going after him, and his pulse does not go above 50. He just has it together, and he infuriated the prosecutor, and basically, and I have this kind of fun monologue he has in his head during it because they said something like, they used the term "piss up a rope," and he was like, and he wondered how would one piss up a rope. But living with Ben, growing up with him was very, very abusive, and I think to kind of quell the rage and abuse, that's when we all started doing drugs and stuff like that, and drinking.
Is he still alive?
He died.
Ben died.
He died 2019, I think.
Oh.
So yeah.
But he read it. He read your book too.
He loved it. He thought it was great. He said, "I think your voice is great. I don't care what you do to me."
Well, he appreciated art.
Yeah, he really did. He said, "Your spelling is atrocious and you can't punctuate, but the content is terrific." And he said an interesting thing. He said, "I don't give a fuck how your book does. I don't care what you sell. The important thing is I've been around artists who have voices, and I know what that is, and it's hard to find that. And you have that. You have to cultivate that. You have to take care of that. You have to nurture that. And that's what I care about. Otherwise, God bless."
The other thing that I thought was cool was that your mom marries this gazillionaire, and it sounded, like she loved him, but also she liked what he could give her and her kids. And yeah,
Guy Linus says it in the book. He says it because I remember we were in Europe with him, and I said, "How did she marry this guy?" And he said, "Your poor mother. She was 40. She had 3 kids. Your father didn't have a pot to piss in. What was she going to do? Right. How was she going to live? What was going to happen?" And then in swoops this guy.
Well, what was cool about it was that she also said, "I want to make my own money." That's very Helen
went to Bank Street, 71, the second they got married, teachers college, got her degree. And I said, "Why are you doing this?" And she said, I don't want this. And when Madoff happened, when he got clobbered, my mother said, "We have nothing and I make a living."
So, Madoff, I know that Madoff, he hurt Kira and Kevin.
Stepfather was fully invested with Madoff. He lost everything.
So did they have to move? What'd they do?
No, what happened was he pulled a rabbit out of a hat, which is an entirely another story, but very quickly he bought all the Seagram's Rothkos for, I'll say it, Ezra Merkin at
Yeah.
Merkin Hall in, right, exactly. So that's that guy. He was like supposed to be a terrific Jew. Turned out he was a direct feeder for Madoff. So Ben knew that he was going to be sued after having purchased all the Seagram's Rothkos. So he would have a terrific Rothko collection. He knew he was going to be sued, and he knew he was going to need an agent for the Rothkos, and Ben knew he was going to be the agent. So Ben won all his money back because sure enough, Merkin was being sued, and he needed to be liquid, and he needed to sell the Rothko collection. So Ben lost the money. He's a fascinating guy. I mean, and he's pulled a couple rabbits out of the hat in his life like that. It's really remarkable.
So maybe he's your next book.
Could be. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, interesting. Do you want to read from your book? Because one of the things I want to get to is
I got to run and go get a copy of it. I didn't know there was going to be math on this stuff.
No, I can read.
Oh, you read. Go ahead. I'd love to hear you.
No, you're a better reader, and but I think I'm going to read the first paragraph just because.
Sure.
I have to turn on my light because I'm old, but not as old as you.
Thanks, Dad.
I'm going to read this one line because then I want this thing. Okay. This is chapter 2 of Rob Sedgwick.
Okay.
Bob goes to jail.
Bob goes to jail, baby.
My sister and I are snorting coke in my apartment-sized bedroom at 127 East 75th Street, the townhouse we live in that's twice as big as any East Side townhouse. I'm 17 and Kira's 13. The house is so big, we don't see the parents for days. The back staircase wraps around the elevator shaft, and wherever the elevator is parked on is the floor my stepfather Ben is on. We always hang out on any other floor. And then, you know, the coke is fantastic. We get it from Ned, who works as a chef down the street. He's so cool looking, like Rod Stewart when he sang Maggie May. Anyway, he's great friends with our cook Linus. It goes on. But, so you just outed your sister. I mean,
well, it was a long time ago, and she said it was fine. You know, I mean, it was just, but she was there. You know, we're very close, and that's what happened, you know.
And she was okay with it. She didn't mind.
Yeah, it happened, you know. I mean, she was there, you know, and that's what we did. And it was like, you know, and it goes on to say that my mother almost catches us, and she looks at my mother and my sister, and she said, "My God, you look like
Janis Joplin.
Janis Joplin. I have to take you to Saks." And she was like, "Okay." And she ended up saving the coke. We almost got busted by my mom.
I know.
But yeah, but it was. Yeah, it was like, it was not, you know, I have an 8-year-old now, and when he turns what age he turns, I would never dream of leaving him alone for the weekend or letting him, you know, you pay attention to your kids, and we didn't really get paid much attention to. So that's what happened. They would go to East Hampton on the weekends. We'd have parties. We'd play, you know, Stevie Wonder, Uptight, Everything's All Right, dance like crazy, get completely fucked up, and have all these people over. And it was just, but a lot of people had that experience in New York. So.
Then that's the envy I have, because all my rich friends who from New York City, the kids were just, they had what seemed like so much fun. And yet, when I think about it, one of my friends, her family was from the Harry Winston family. And her mother had died when my friend was like 15, and her father was sick. And so she had all this privilege growing up in Park Avenue, and yet my friend was heartbroken. And the thread through the book, your book, that I kept picking up on was this desperate attention you wanted from your mom and her approval. And this, like, it was all
from both of them, yeah.
From both of them, certainly from your dad.
Yeah.
Not, I mean, your dad sounds like he would have been a lot of fun to hang out with, but certainly not a parent. But your mom was, I mean, she worried about you, you know, she loved you.
Yeah.
I think it was very much like The Ice Storm. That's how I think about it. Remember the movie The Ice Storm book?
Never saw it. Oops.
All about 70s, and the parents are having these parties and going off, and the kids are being left alone to just do whatever, and disaster ensues.
But I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go. It's your thing.
But there's also, but the book also it does start out with a bust. It really, the front story really does, I hope, kind of rocket through and about like some like completely fish out of water me dealing with having a contract on your head, looking at 5 to 40 in jail, doing walk and talks in the park because you're under surveillance for the Drug Enforcement Agency, having the Drug Enforcement Agency just show up unannounced at the bar you hang out at, just down the street, just checking up on you. and then having pre what it wasn't probation, but have somebody they had to report to all the time. Yeah, every parole guy every couple of weeks, and your analysis test and dealing with the law and dealing with lawyers and getting your case right and stuff like that, and dealing with that sort of Damocles is over your head for a year. And I would always wake up in the morning and go like, you'd have a nice dream or something like, what's that bad thing again? It's like, oh yeah, I could be going to jail. And then when I found out from Jordan that he said that, Diego has put a contract on you and wants to, snuff you. And I said, snuff in the sense of, you mean he wants to smell me? He was, no, as in he wants to have you killed. And I'm like, oh, great. I'm an idiot and I have to die for it. And then that entire rest of the year, looking over your shoulders for Mexicans who didn't look too happy with you. It was crazy,
Did you ever go to therapy?
Oh yeah, constantly. I mean, and it now, but it's funny at the time before we got busted, I was seeing a therapist, and right before I saw him, and I say it in the book, I had all the accoutrement for the bust. I had the bounce, I had the hefty trash bags, I had the big duffel bags to put the stuff in, and I was so excited. And the shrink was going like, maybe this isn't a good idea, and I was like, ha, pshaw. And of course, right after that, we got busted.
Do you think, looking back on it now, in a way, and you make all these references to movies, and you're a theatrical person. I mean, you were an actor. Part of it, the way I read it, was you were just living this you were in the middle of a movie. You were living a movie.
Oh my God, yeah. Well, one thing I got to say, it's never been boring. I mean, it was really and that we're alive is really amazing, But and especially before I was dealing, and I say this in the book, when I got this offer to do this, you feel like James Bond. And especially, but I didn't know all the bad stuff. So I wasn't ready for that. So you think woohoo. And I remember driving in Jordan's Bronco, seeing people wait online at the ATM. And it's like, I don't have to do that. I got $5,000 in cash. Fuck you. And back then that was a lot of money,
Yep.
Well,
somebody asked, one of the questions we have here is from Lisa, which is, can you tell me why you chose to sell drugs given you were wealthy? And I think he just answered it because it was like.
Well, so I didn't have any money back then. I didn't have any money. I was staying at my grandparents because I was broke. My parents weren't giving me any money. I had done well enough in support of myself, but it was really drying up. And I ran into Jordan on the street. And this is how stupid I was. I was with my dog Tybalt, which is a major factor in the book. And at the end of the day, it's almost like a love story with my dog, because he was the kind of angel to watch over me that I didn't die, and I should have easily. And he did not like Jordan. He didn't like the idea of Jordan, but I ran into him on the street at a payphone. And I said, what are you doing? He was great friends with my brother, and I knew that he was a drug dealer. And I said, are you doing? And I was very lonely. I was feeling very sorry for myself at the time and woebegone. And I ran into Jordan and I said, oh, are you doing nudge, nudge, wink, wink? And he was like, yeah, I got stuff I got to load up the street. And I was like, well, why don't you come upstairs and use my grandparents' phone? Of course. And he used the phone. And he said, thanks. And I said, and if you are doing whatever it is you do, I insist you use this apartment. And he cased the apartment, he cased the joint. And I say that in the
joint,
which I loved. And he came back, he said, this could really work out. And I said, I insist it work out. He said, no, you would be paid. I said, no, I couldn't be paid. And I wanted to make friends with him because he was my best friend with my brother. And he said, no, you would get $3,000 a load, $3,000 a load. And we do twice a month. So you'd make $70,000 a year with sitting your thumb up your ass. And I was like,
okay,
wow. And this was like 88. And that was for doing nothing. So I was like, sure. And the first load that came in, I was all namby-pamby and this is so wonderful. The elevator gets stuck. We're there with a woman who lives in the building. She's like, what are these boxes for? And I'm made up some big lie. And she's like, oh, isn't that wonderful? And of course, Jordan and the driver are there and they're shitting themselves because there were two separate refrigerator boxes filled with 250 pounds of pot each. So that's a quarter ton. That's a lot. And they were like, oh my God. And when we got up to the apartment, it worked out. Jordan was like, you're amazing. You're so talented. You were born for this. You were so great. You were just your acting thing. I was like, I was so happy. So that's how stupid I was. So that's how I got into it. Literally, that's how stupid it was. And that's how I got into it.
Yeah, yeah, it was stupid, but it also makes sense. I mean, if one is an adrenaline junkie and one wants to,
Yeah.
live, I mean,
So much fun.
That's how you
So much fun. Yeah.
Tell me, one of the stories that I like was Mexican at Brats.
Well, I had the contract on my head that Jordan told me about, and so I was hanging out with a friend of mine who was named Bruce, who looks like Danny DeVito without the career, and we were all doing coke in the bathroom and stuff like that. We came out, and this herd of Mexican guys came in, and I thought, oh my! And of course, I'm high as a kite. My friend Moss was behind the bar, and I thought, oh my God, this is it! I'm going to get killed in the bar. This is my living room bar, so I did all the diagram in my head. There was no way out. I was trapped. And one guy was looking at me really mean, like, I don't know, Treasure of Sierra Madre, you name it. I mean, it was real. I was like, oh, fuck. And I went, there was no way out. I said to Moss, who was one of my closest friends, I said, the contract on my head? Yeah. He said, the Mexican guys? Yeah, I think they're here. And Moss went, oh, okay. So he gets a baseball bat. And Boss is a big, strong guy, gets a baseball bat, ambles over to the Mexican guys, just like Mickey Mantle in a World Series, like just taking his time. And he had the bat resting on his shoulder. And he said, can I help you, ladies? And they were like, we are not ladies. Why is your friend looking at us? And he's so mean. And he's like, what do you mean? He's like, we just wanted to come here. We just wanted to have a drink. And he said, where are you guys from? We're dishwashers at Bahama Mama's right up the street. And we were just like, oh God.
Like cerveza.
So we all drank that night, and we were all very happy. And we were all I was apologizing all over the place. So they were very lovely guys, and it was just, and everything was fine. But it was just like, yeah, I mean, that was scary. And the guy who called that contract, his liver ended up exploding in jail. So
right, and wasn't he the one who also got sliced?
He didn't get sliced. He had another. He had the driver actually. The driver was caught in Missouri. He gave up the load. That's how he got busted, and he cooperated with the government. And Diego had his neck sliced, and he was dead. And Jordan and I were talking about that in the bar, and he said, I can't remember the guy's name. He said, remember that guy? And I said, yeah. What? I said, where is he? He's like, well, he doesn't talk so well anymore because he had his, throat slit. It's like,
yeah.
Whoa. Yeah. But they were Robles family. They are an intergenerational family of criminals, back there in Mexico. So
one of the things that I also wanted to talk to you about, and your book, I get a little tired with how PC everything is. I'm not that PC.
Not PC.
No, and
not PC.
So not PC. I like PC exhausts me, and your book is not PC, but it's not PC in a way it's the best to me. Again, here's your father who's like hanging out with Martin Luther King, right?
Yeah.
And you're objecting to this cotillion kind of whatever it's called, garden gaieties. What was it called?
Goddard Gaieties. I'll never forget.
Yes, and you're telling Linus, your cook, who's a racist son of a bitch. I mean, you're telling him stop it, right? I mean,
yeah.
You're totally.
He was more crazy. He wasn't racist at all. He was just really crazy. I mean, he was a fascinating. You meet these geniuses who are they're not in touch with reality. They're just like, and he ended up, as I said, raping one of my best friends, and we found out 20 years later because he was so traumatized.
And also, Linus would probably be in jail today. I mean.
Yeah, but he's dead. He drank himself to death. Is that
what happened? I thought he ended up having
he drank himself to death. And I say in the book, he drank himself to death. He died of he drank himself to death. Yeah.
Cancer.
Yeah, it was an esophageal cancer, but that was from drinking too much. Yeah.
And the other thing is he was young. I mean, he was only in his 20s. Is that possible?
Yeah, I think it was really early 30s because it was like a 2-3 year period, like really 31ish or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was very interesting. One of the other things that you don't talk about, but I know you are, is sober. And
I don't touch that in the book, though. It was funny because I was talking to Town and Country, and he said, I love this. It's not a redemption story. You don't get sober. There's nothing in the book. And I said, that's not the story. I didn't get sober then.
No, in fact, you make yourself look, I mean, how did you get off? I don't know if we want to let people know how you got off. So I don't know if we want to talk about that, but you got off.
I mean, it's spoiler alert. I flipped. I mean, I cooperated. I cooperated, and I have a whole Bugs Bunny thing. Like I sang, like but I talk rabbit talk, and I was like, blah, 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 and I gave up everybody. But the lawyer gave. I'm sorry.
Did you ever feel remorseful about that, or
no? They're all my best friends. All the guys I put in jail are all my best friends. I mean, I go to their weddings. They got it. Jordan's doing great now. I talk to him all the time. I love him to death. I got divorced. I was having trouble with money. He's like, look in your bank account. He gave me $5,000. I said, when I pay you back. And he's like, don't even worry about it. Don't think about it. But he also said, when I gave him up, he said, well, I guess there's organized crime and then there's disorganized crime. And I guess we were disorganized. And he said, you did what you had to do. We didn't talk. We all stayed away from each other for a couple of years. But when he got out, he called me up and I was like, Jordan, and he's like, yeah. I said, are you in jail? He said, no, I'm on the east side. I said, what? I've been on the east side for a year. I was like, oh my God. So I said, can I come over? And he said, come on over. I brought a bottle of tequila, and he was 6'5", like 160 with a needle hanging out of his arm when he went in. He opened the door. He was a mountain. He was 230. He'd done all his weightlifting in jail. And he was enormous. And he got sober too, though. I'm sober,
And none of them were pissed at you. Not one of them.
No, it's really, well, they kind of understood what the deal was, and that I had to say, yourself. Yeah. And that, and he wasn't ready. He didn't prepare it right. And Seth never got caught. He was just so under the radar. He ended up moving to Brazil for a couple of years. But everyone's very sober now and boring and, do nothing, you know what I mean? Have families, and we made it. We're lucky, and yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so let me ask you one more question, and then it's 7:44, so we have maybe.
Sure.
Yeah. But I could talk a while longer, but I know we have a time limit. You teach acting, right? You stopped acting and you teach it now? Or do you
acting's enough. I mean, I love writing, and teaching is just a gas. It's really great.
You're Kaminsky.
Yeah, I saw that. I mean, yeah, I guess so, but it's like, I really work hard for them. I really get off when they get it and they really click, and I really care about them. And it's much more, acting is so egotistical, and you're so everything about you, and it gets so boring. And now you're just of service. You're really trying to help, and you're trying to do the best you can. And it's not about you, it's about them, and trying to help them grow, and, get in there and tinker around, but do it gently, and whatever is going to press buttons to make somebody better, and really get in deeply and have them personalize and work really hard. Because I think a lot of people don't work really hard. And, I hear a lot of actor friends of mine and director friends of mine who say this generation, they just don't work hard. They show up not knowing their lines.
Well, that's because they had parents who were not your parents. They were your parents hover and right, and they do everything for them.
Well, I mean, they don't know their lines. They don't make any choices. And I kick ass in my class. I mean, you have to read the play. You have to rehearse. You stay with one play for 5 weeks. I pretty consistently get from casting directors I bring in. They're just like, the work is fantastic. And it's good. And it's a lot more fulfilling than, acting it's a rough game, man. It's a rough game,
What made you decide to sit down and write? Had you ever written before?
I thought this story was really great. And I started off as a one-man show. And then I have a friend of mine in Los Angeles, Greg Ostrin, who I told him about it. And he said, oh my God, this is a great idea. I had a screenplay I wrote about it. It was such a great story, but I lost it. He wrote it in the early 90s. He wrote it in the early 90s when they didn't have, he wrote it down. He lost it. So he said, send me pages. And I kept sending him pages. After 30 pages, what do you think? He said, I think it's great. I think the writing is great. I think it's wonderful. So I said, one-man show. And he said, it's not a one-man show. I hate to tell you this, but you're writing a book. And I was like, I don't know how to write a book. I mean, how am I going to write? He said, well, I hate to tell you this, but you're writing one. So treat it like a job, send me your pages, and just keep working on it. And that's what I did. I wrote 5-6 hours a day. I gave myself 200 to 300 words, and that I had to get up to about, no, was it, I don't know, 200, 600, whatever the word count was. It was 2 pages, so it was 600 words a day. And that I had to make that even if it sucked. And then the next day, go over it. And if it needed work, great. If not, just move on. And another 600 words. And you turn around in 6 months, the book's done, So.
Not on the structure because it's non-linear. It's not chronological at all. You jump.
Well, I started out the front. The front is linear. The front story, the jail story, the present story, and I write that in the past, but that's linear. And when I was writing it, all of a sudden I was singing this song, always jump in the middle, in the middle, in the middle, in the middle, in the middle of the bed. And I was like, what? And that was a song I made up when I was about 7 years old, bouncing in the middle of the bed in 300 Central Park West when my mom just got separated from my dad. And I thought, what the fuck? So I started writing that chapter. And then, so the book started taking on this, one chapter is the front story. And then the next chapter, preceding chapter would be going into the past. And you alternate past, present, past, present, past, present. Some of the memories actually feather into the present,
right.
All kind of leading up to how I ended up like this, why someone like me would end up like this. In no way feeling sorry for myself or wanting pity or wanting any, oh, you poor boy at all, but just showing how something like this happens. And I think you take the money away, any kid without guidance and who's kind of like abused and the kids are left alone, bad shit can happen, and this could happen. I hope it's funny. I hope it's, I certainly don't let myself off the hook. I kind of really take myself to task the whole time, but hopefully in a funny way.
It is fun. No, I laughed a couple of times, and I have everything, a lot of things written down, but we can't get to them. But we do have a question from Debbie Ben, which is,
Hi, Debbie.
Hi, Debbie. What's the message you want readers to get from the book?
Oh, I don't know. That's up to you. I have no message. I mean, that's, take care of your dog. I mean,
parents don't reproduce. I mean, that was when I was writing.
No, I mean, I think that I think if you had to really categorize the book, I would say it is kind of a love story about my dog who took care of me throughout this whole thing. And without whom I would have been dead long time ago. I mean, he was something else. Message, I think that's up to anyone who reads it to, figure out their own thing from it. And I think it's sort of like, obviously don't deal drugs, but I had a blast, man. And had we not gotten caught, oh man, it was the best. Wonderful. I mean, it was the highest I've ever been without boozer. Yeah, it was just like on life, So I'd say the message is like, I don't know, try to live life to its fullest, but try not to hurt yourself or something. I don't know. I mean, it's just, I couldn't, that's tough. That's
being
tough.
Sober, Rob,
I'm sorry.
Sober,
yes.
Do you still get those? Because my sober friends, they don't have those extreme highs, but they don't have those extreme lows. So. Oh,
I have extreme highs and lows all the time. I wake up, man. I mean, I've had a mattress saga trying to get a mattress to, delivered to my apartment. I'm just screaming at Bob's Furniture and what else? Mattress Firm. No, Mattress Firm and Bob's Discount Mattresses, and it's impossible. So no, I have a great time sober and bad times sober, but the great thing is I have tools to deal with shit now. Whereas when I was drinking, it's just like everything's a drama, and you don't have the wherewithal to deal with life on life's terms, And I'm just, if I was sober, if I was lucky, I would have been dead. If I was lucky.
Did you go to meetings? How'd you get sober?
Oh yeah, I went to meetings immediately. I ran into a guy who used to hang out at the bar that is very chronicled in the book. And if you ended up at that bar, you were either a criminal or a serious alcoholic, that was a rough bar. And I ran into a guy, Dominican guy, who was in the bar days, was like Coke sprinkled all over his pirate beard, and everybody held him in high disregard. And I ran into him in 95 on Broadway and like 106th Street. The second I saw him, I knew he was sober and I was still drinking. And I said, yo, how are you? He said, he looked like $1 million. And I said, still go to the bar? And I knew he was going to say no. And he said, nope. And I said, there's a weird bend to my drinking. I didn't even ask him if he was sober. I was just like, we exchanged numbers, and I called him intermittently. This is in the summer, and I got sober October 25th, 95, and I kept on calling and talking. I said the bend in my drinking. He never mentioned AA. He never mentioned stop drinking. He just listened, offered a couple, suggestions maybe here and there. And when I called him October 25th, said, I've got to go to a meeting. He said, I've been waiting for you.
There you go.
I mean, and it was guardian angel time, and it was just, how beautiful was that? I've been waiting for you. And he never read me like anything from AA or a riot act or you should do this. It was just like listening and really gentle and kind and loving and quite remarkable. So, and I've been sober ever since, and he was like, thank God, just remarkable. That's how the program works. So,
well, and on that note, we'll end on a high.
Hi.
And are there any more questions from anybody? Anybody? Is there anything? Benita, Amanda, anybody? Okay. Hello, Belle. Well, thank you all.
Thank you.
And again, this is the book, and you also have the links in the email, I guess, or in the.
Yeah, and I've been posting them in the chat. You can get them from Belmont. We do ship them throughout the US, so feel free to buy them from us or your other local independent bookstore. Support an indie, keep them alive, keep them in business.
Oh yeah, definitely, absolutely. Can keep your local bookstore going.
Yeah.
And thank you to both Rob and Abby for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
And for anyone who popped in halfway through, we did record the event, so check on our YouTube channel, Belmont Books, within like 24 to 48 hours. We usually have the recording up so you can kind of catch up on everything you missed.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Rob.
Okay, we're going. Thank you so much, guys. Bye. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.